Hi everyone, this is a music production course. This is the fourth video. So the first one was about compression, the second one about your software, like the program Logic Pro, how it works in comparison to other similar DAWs. And the third video was about delays, and this one is going to be about a reverb. You could wonder, why did you talk about delays before you start talking about reverb? There's a good reason for that. When you have a live performance when you have a live performance, there is a lot of reverb in the room present. Reverb, what is reverb? It's the bounce back of your sound. It's all the bounce backs together. So if you are in a room, the walls will reflect your sound, but everything else in the room too. If you have a piano, a chair, some closets, depending on the materials like wood or concrete or whatever, you have a different kind of reflection. And all reflections together create reverb. It's called the room reverb of that room. Then later on, they created different kind of reverbs, like plate reverbs. That's a plate that's actually trembling. A string reverb, it's like a string that's actually trembling. And they added that to sound. But originally, when we think about reverb, the natural reverb, so to say, then it's just the reverb of a room. You could think of reverb as, I'm going to make an analogy, as the hair on someone's head. So you have your head, there's a lot of hair on it. That's the reverb. And what is the delay? The delay is just one hair. You can compare it with one bounce back. So the dry sound bounces back and becomes wet. That's the delay. So what's reverb then? Reverb is a collection of bounce backs, and a delay is just one of that. As you can see, this is my lead vocal. I will turn it on for a moment.
I am what I am. You are what you want.
So that's the lead vocal.
Fighting for space.
And as you can see, I created a lot of delays here. A ping pong delay, the Haas delay, slapback delay. And the reverb, delays are not clouding the mix. You should think of reverb in an artificial situation like this, because this is not a natural situation. We are mixing music in a DAW that's going to be played through two speakers. That's not a natural situation. So we are mixing for those stereo speakers. We are not mixing for a natural situation. And reverb is like a mist, it's like a fog. If there is too much reverb in a mix, then it will create a lot of density. Like you have the sounds, the dry sounds, and then they are kind of pushed away by that mist, by that fog called reverb. That's why most mixing engineers prefer to use delays to create the impression of a room, to make the sound wet. It's a dry recording. And to make that dry recording wet, we create a room around it, preferably with delays. And then we add some reverbs to those delays. So as you can see, I got the Haas delay on the left, and I got the Haas delay on the right. And I have added some reverb to it. So if you go into this bus and I open it, here's my reverb. It's a warm hall. that is attached to this delay. So first the sound goes into the delay, and then it goes to another bus, 178. So the sound of the delay goes on, and then a copy of the delay, of this delayed sound, goes through the reverb. So you have the delay, and then added to it the delay that goes through that warm hall. And as you can see, the delay has been opened. Like here you can see it's on -25 volume, and the reverb is on -50. So I add only a little bit of room of this warm hall to the delay. I make the delay sound as if I give some space, create some space around the delay. That's what I do. With the ping pong delays too, you will see it. You have a ping pong delay, and then added to it, a copy of the ping pong delay goes through bus 174, and then you will see that you again have that warm hall. All these delays, except for the slapback delay, because that's already positioned right on top of the main vocal, on the lead vocal. So the slapback delay has no reverb, because the lead vocal already will have some reverb on top of it itself, has no reverb. So the Dehaas delay, reverb added to it, ping pong delay, reverb added to it. But the slapback delay hasn't, because there is already some reverb on top of the main vocal too, but it's not a lot. Let me show you that. These are the reverbs on top of the lead vocal. It's that warm hall again, and a reverb plate on top of it. So the plate gives it that two-dimensional space, a little bit of widening effect, and that warm hall gives a little bit of depth to it. So I added a combination of two reverbs. It's mostly done like that. So on my guitar, you will find that warm hall and a string reverb combined. So let's see, this is bus 170 and so let's hear. So bus 170 and bus 171, that's the reverb on top of the vocal. But it's not a lot. I put it very softly. So have a look here. You add a little bit of reverb on top, but you have to turn it. Why is it not very loud on top of the vocal? It will push the vocal backwards. I told you reverb is a little bit of a fog, a mist. It creates density, so there's only a little bit of reverb panned on top of this vocal. And all the other room feel that you get is because I have a lot of delays, and these delays are getting a little bit of space by making that delay going through that same combination of the hall and the plate. And then it sounds like this. Let's just turn the wet sound on.
You are what you want. We're tigers in a cage.
So what you hear are mostly delays.
The earth is still spinning,
and I gave room to those delays. So don't think it the other way. Don't think I have to add reverb to my vocal and also some delays. No, you add delays to the vocal, and then you make a copy of those delays, go through the reverb, so the delay has some room. You don't give the vocal room, you give the delays of the vocal some room. So that's the first aspect. It's that you should consider reverb as a mist, as a fog. It creates density. So we use delays and we add some reverb to those delays. Have a look. This is interesting. Do you see that the bus has it's green over here and it's blue over here? Why is bus 172 blue at the left side, and all the other buses you can see have a green dot, a green wheel at the right side? You can change that. Look at that. I can change it. Now 170, bus 170. So this is the Haas delay left. The reverb now is taken after the panning. So it's taken after the panning. So the Haas delay is panned minus 20, and now this reverb will pan right on top of it unless I change it to like this. Pre-fader means, in fact, before the panning, strangely enough. Huh? So it should be before panning, post-panning, but that's not what it's called. It's called pre-fader. So before the fader means I tap off the sound just before the panning. Why am I doing this? Because I want to pan the reverb itself a little bit more to the middle. So the Haas delay is panned minus 20, but the reverb is panned minus 23. If I don't want that, if you say, oh, that's too much work, then you just put it on post pan and you put this on 0. And now the copy of the delay goes into the reverb and it automatically takes the panning of the reverb because you have selected post pan here. You can also select post fader, then it takes the volume of the delay. So then the sound going into this bus would be already minus 25 decibels. I didn't do that. So when you take this pre-fader position, which means before the panning, you take the original volume that comes into this track and you make a copy and you make it go through the reverb. And then I just adjusted the volume I wanted for this reverb myself here on the fader. You will see that I used, I have to put it back on minus 23, isn't it? You'll see that the ping pong delay, I did the same thing. So you have a ping pong delay left, and there is a copy of the sound going into bus 174, and it's before the pan up, before the fader, before the pan up. So it goes into here. And then it reaches bus 174, that's this one. And as you can see, I panned the reverb a little bit inward. So the ping pong delay is totally at the left side of the left speaker, but the reverb is not, the reverb of this ping pong delay is panned a little bit inward. Why would I do that? Why would I put the reverb not just on top of the ping pong delay? It's because I use the spreader. So the reverb is a little bit spreaded. If you pan it all the way to the left, then part of the spread cannot happen because you already reached the end, the left side of the left speaker, you already reached it. So you would only have a little spread to the right side, but the other part of the spreader would not work. So if you put it like here, for example, you have a little bit of spread to this side, to the left side, because you have some room left there, you see that. The good thing too is that you create, because a reverb should be compared to density, by detaching the reverb from the delays, you can create density where there is no music. So you have the vocal in the middle, it sounds in the middle, The guitar is panned out, but only a little bit. It's quite close to the vocal, like it's plus 20 panned out. And then the piano is not panned out at all because it's already a stereo recording. So you have already some sound in the left and some sound in the right. So it's not in the way of the vocal. The vocal is in the middle, and this part of the piano will sound at the left side of the vocal, and this part of the piano will sound at the right side of the vocal. So that's why the piano is not panned out a lot. It's just panned out a little bit to move it away from the guitar. And then every instrument has these ping pong delays going on in the left side of your ear and the right side of your ear, and the guitar has it too. So you have sound in the middle and you have sound on the sides of the speakers, but what about the empty space in between? Because you have to consider it like half a circle. The vocal is here, the guitar is over here, the piano is over here, and the delays, the ping pong delays, are sounding totally at the sides of the speakers. So there is some room left over here. And you can use that room to create a certain density there. You can create sound there by detaching the reverb from the ping pong delays, and you can pan it inwards, a little bit inwards, and then use that spreader. So you have a little bit, when that was your half circle, you create a little bit of sound where there was an empty space. So you have to use your imagination and think like, okay, my vocal is over here, the guitar is over here, the piano is a little bit at both sides, and then you have the stereo delays going on, and then what about the space over here? Maybe I can put some backing vocals over there. That's what I did. You put some backing vocals there, like this backing vocal is panned -10, so that's still partly in the middle. This one +24, and this one, okay, +45. So there's a little bit in that half circle, a little bit of more sound here at the right side, because there is a backing vocal that sounds there too. So that's what you do when you mix a song. You wonder, where do I have an empty space in? You have a left speaker and a right speaker. And where do I have some space left in the mix? And that's where you put the reverb. That's where you create the density. You don't create it preferably on top of the instruments. You don't preferably create it. I mean, you can put some reverb on top of the instruments, but then you have to turn the volume. You have to just a little bit. And if you add reverb anywhere else, then preferably detach it from the delays and position it somewhere where you have no sound yet. Is everything said now about reverb? No. So I started with telling you it's kind of like a fog, so let's detach it and let's place it where there is no sound yet. The second part is probably one of the most important things to know when you mix a song. Listen to it again. I will play the song right from the start, and you tell me, what's the main vocal? What's the lead vocal? Is it the man's voice, or is it the girl's voice? You can already read it, of course, but just listen now.
I am what I am. You are what you are.
It's still the word
We're
sounds
dogs fighting for a bone and a yacht.
like this.
Come on, let go. I'm not the enemy. It's time to forfeit all animosity.
So, who's the lead vocalist? It's definitely the male. Why? A lot of reasons. First of all, the volume is a bit louder of the male vocalist. So that's why you consider it the lead. Another reason why you consider it the lead, it's because it's positioned right in the middle of the mix. And the girl is positioned a little bit to the left. That creates the impression that he's the leading vocalist. Another reason is because I make him start singing and she comes in a little bit later. So the first words, he's all there by himself, solo. It only becomes a duet when she comes in.
I am what I am. You are what you are.
Did you hear that? But that's not the main reason why you think that he is the lead. Have a look. When I open the reverb on top of the lead vocalist, and you can see it is set at 47 milliseconds, which is a 64th of the length of a measure when the song is played at 80 beats per minute. So that's a calculation. And when we have a look at the reverb of this girl's voice, I will open it. You can see that it's set on 31 milliseconds, or a 64th triplet of a quarter note. Or is this a whole measure? The one? No, it's a quarter note. Is it? Let's have a look what it is. Because I'm confused. Let's see what it is. So you have a quarter note. Oh yeah. So 1-on-1 is a whole bar. So it's 1/64th of a whole bar of 4 quarter notes in this case. Okay. So you can see, if I turn it on milliseconds, that the girl's reverb has a pre-delay of 31 milliseconds, and the male's vocal has a reverb with a pre-delay of 47 milliseconds. That's a difference of 16 milliseconds. You could wonder, is that important that there is a shorter pre-delay on the girl's voice? And what is exactly a pre-delay? Let me explain that to you. This number 2 here is the singer, and this is you, the listener. If the singer is standing pretty close to you, then the dry vocal of this person will reach you quite immediately. This dry sound of the singer will go to the wall. It's bouncing against the wall. And this dry sound is also bouncing against this wall. And the moment it bounces against the wall, here too, the dry vocal travels on behind your back all the way to this wall. And the moment it bounces back on one of the walls, it becomes a wet sound. So the dry sound travels, bounces, becomes wet. The dry sound travels, bounces, and becomes wet. The dry sound travels, bounces, becomes wet. And then that wet sound returns to you, the listener. So the dry sound reaches you earlier. It reaches you first. And the wet sound comes in later. There is a delay. That's how you know when you listen to someone if that person's close to you or not. Imagine you're standing with your back to the listener and he starts singing. You will immediately know that he's pretty close, because there are some milliseconds it takes, in this case 47 milliseconds, for the wet sound to reach you in comparison to the dry sound. So that's how you know. It's animal instinct that the person is close. What if the person, the singer, is far away from you? The dry sound, the singer is singing, reaches you. The dry sound also becomes wet sound, and it reaches you a little bit later. But you can see that there will be not that much difference in travel time anymore. The dry sound reaches you and the wet sound reaches you a bit later, but not that much later as over here in this situation. So that's how you know that person 2 is standing further away from you. So if the pre-delay, the delay of the wet sound is less big, this person is standing further away from you. Of course, you already know that when someone is standing quite close to you, you can immediately understand what the person is saying because the wet sound comes in later. So I told you that reverb is kind of like a fog or a mist. So the mist comes in later, so you have a chance to understand the first letters, the first syllable maybe even, before it's clouded by the reverb of the room. In this case, when the person says something, even if he says it's louder so you can understand it normally quite well, you will not understand it as perfectly as you did here, because the wet sound is will reach you nearly at the same time, only with a little pre-delay, a little delay, and that's why it's harder to understand someone who's further away. It's not because the person might sound more softly. No, he can turn up the volume by yelling at you, but still, it will be harder for him. It will be harder for you to understand him, because that cloud, that fog of reverb, will be over everything he says. And that's how you know if an instrument is close or far away from you. It depends on the amount of delay between the dry sound and the wet sound. Let me go to the drums here. I will open a reverb. Let's take that warm hall again. And you will see the pre-delay is only 6 milliseconds. This means that you will consider the drum far away because the dry sound of the drums and the wet sound, there is only a 6 milliseconds difference. When we go to the piano, I will open the reverb of the piano now. Wait, the bass has no reverb on it, and also no delays. So the bass it's kind of, the bass is playing in no room at all. There is no delay, no reverb on the bass. So you see, that's an artificial situation that would never happen in reality. But if you go to the reverb of the piano, and let's line them up a bit. Like this is the drums, 6 milliseconds. This is the piano, 23 milliseconds. Let's go on. For the guitar, it will be the same. It will also be 23 milliseconds. And then we go to the lead vocal. It's hard to say it, huh? Oh, I have to move it out of the way. So that's the lead vocal. That's 47 milliseconds. So you can see drums are further away from you. The piano is closer, and the closest instrument is that lead vocal, because there is a certain delay of 47 milliseconds before that reverb reaches your ear in comparison to the dry sound. So the pre-delay on a reverb, that knob is an important knob because it positions your musicians on our virtual stage. You want the drummer to be further away from the audience than the singer. Why? Because you want the people to listen to the singer. The singer is the lead. If you want to change it around and you want to make the drums the lead, you should switch the pre-delay. The people will then think that the singer is standing behind the drummer. So if you add pre-delay to the reverb of the drummer, the drummer will move forward on your virtual stage. What's the difference? So the drummer had a pre-delay on the reverb of 6 milliseconds and the vocalist had a pre-delay of 47 milliseconds. You can calculate it, the sound, the speed and so on. That's about 14 meters of difference on your virtual stage. So the drummer is sitting 14 meters behind the lead singer if you use a pre-delay of 6 milliseconds for the drums and a pre-delay of 47 milliseconds for the vocal, the lead vocal. And for the backing vocals, we use a pre-delay that's between the pre-delay of you had 23 milliseconds of pre-delay for the piano and the guitar, and the pre-delay on the backing vocals is 31 milliseconds. So the drums 6 milliseconds, the piano 23 milliseconds, the backing vocals 31 milliseconds, and the lead vocal 47 milliseconds. All right. Let's now focus. You could wonder, like, how do you come up with all those milliseconds? There is something like a those are my notes. Let's open this website. It's just a website. You type in Google pre-delay calculator website, and then this is a popular one. You give in the BPM of your music, so the beats per minute. It's it's 80 beats per minute. So if you add it here, you get a whole list. It says the pre-delay of the drums, you can put it to 6, 23 for the piano and the guitars, 47 approximately for the lead vocalist, and that 31 is something in the middle here. That's for the backing vocals. And it also says the length of your reverb. So if you use a song, if you play a song at 80 beats per minute and you mix it, the length of your reverb will be 744 milliseconds or 74 seconds for the drums. It will be longer for the piano player, and the longest reverb is for the vocalist. You could wonder, like, why on earth is this changing? Like, normally when a band plays in a room, they all share the same reverb length and not the same pre-delay, because the drummer on a real stage is also sitting further away. So this is a real live situation that the drummer might have, the wet sound might have to travel longer. But this is not even a real live situation if that live band is playing in a big concert hall and the drummer is using microphones and the piano it's all guided through the PA system. Then it's all coming through the speakers, so the distance on the stage is not represented in the music that you hear through the speakers. So the live mixer, the mixer who is mixing that concert, will have to add those pre-delays himself, because it's not really live anymore. I mean, it's live, the music is played live, but the room reverb is not used anymore. It's the sound that comes through the speakers that projects itself in the room. You only have this situation with a classical orchestra because there are no microphones and speakers involved. So the wood winds and the coppers in the back, the wet sound might reach you nearly at the same time as the dry sound. When the instruments that are sitting a little bit closer, you might have the wet sound might be a bit later, and the instruments that are sitting the closest might have the most pre-delay. The dry sound might reach you a little bit earlier than like the soloist always standing right at the edge of nearly at the edge of the stage, is standing in front of the conductor even. So it's the soloist, because that sound of that violin or whatever the solo instrument is will reach you a little bit earlier, and then the sound of that violin still has to travel all around that concert hall, and it will reach your ears a little bit later, so that's the lead, that's the soloist. But what about the length of these reverbs? Why is it changing? That's a very artificial situation, isn't it? In fact, I make the room always drier for the other instruments. Imagine there is a room and it has nearly a 3 seconds reverb. So the reverb sounds, and when the music stops playing, you have 3 seconds that it takes to die out. That's the decay time. And I make the room drier for the piano player. So it only takes 1.5 seconds now, when the piano player stops playing, for his sound to die out. For the drummer, it's kind of a busy instrument, I make the room even drier, and it only takes like 3/4 of a second now for the drums to fade away, that reverb to stop sounding in that hall. Another way to look at it is that I don't make the room drier, but that I make the room bigger. You can see it here, small room, large room, hall, that the room actually becomes bigger. So you can see we cheat a bit when we mix music. We pretend the drummer is playing in a smaller room than the piano player, and the piano player is playing in a smaller room than the vocalist. Of course, we do this to make all the attention go to the lead singer. Let's see if there's another way to look at it. Yeah, there is another way to look at it. Let's go back to that classical orchestra. I know a conductor, and he told me this. He says, if I play a certain piece in a church, a very wet room, a church might have about, let's say, 5 to 6, even 7 milliseconds, or seconds, 7 seconds before the reverb dies out. So you say something or you play something, and when you stop playing, it takes about 7 seconds before the reverb is all gone. He says, in that case, I have to play that specific music piece very slowly, or the reverb will cloud the whole time what we're playing. But, he said, if I play in a concert hall that's extremely dry, imagine that concert hall had some acoustic treatment and they made it very dry. The walls are not made out of stone anymore, but there's tapestry on the walls. So that room doesn't reflect the sound very long and very much, so it's a dry room. So that conductor told me, if I play in a concert hall with a very short decay time, I will play that same musical piece much faster than I did in the church, because I don't want to have holes falling in my music. Imagine they play, and the moment the orchestra takes a little pause, I don't want suddenly everything to be dry and empty. So to make sure that your music is always filled with sound, that conductor plays slower in a church and faster in a dry concert hall. Luckily for us, we don't have to do that. I set the song to 80 beats per minute, and I can adapt the room to my wishes. I can say, oh, I want it to have a decay time of 5 milliseconds, or I can give it a decay time of 5 seconds, or 3 seconds, or 1.5 seconds. I can decide myself. I can build a room around my music, and I can decide myself what size it has. And this calculator helps you with that. Imagine your song is faster, it's 120 beats per minute, then you will see that the proposition is to make it drier. You see that this vocalist will now have only about 2 seconds of decay time on its reverb, while the song was slower, it had nearly 3 seconds. It had about 3 seconds of decay time on the reverb. That's normal. When the song is, for example, at 180 beats per minute, it's bebop, jazz, then the lead vocalist will only have 1.3 seconds of decay time on that reverb. That's normal. When the song is faster, there's more information, so you need less reverb to fill the holes. You need less fog, less mist, because I compared reverb to a certain fog of sound. You need less of it to create the density in your mix. All right, so you see that we bring the vocalist closer to you by adding a pre-delay time to the reverb, and that we adapt the room size to make the vocal sound large, and all the instruments, we place them in correspondence. And all this creates emotion. So the singer, when he's close to you, it seems as if he's singing just for you. And when he's in a bigger room, it sounds larger and has more emotional impact too. You will hear automatically that I will create a little piece here where the instruments are not present. So when I press play, you will hear the lead vocalist, the backing vocal, and a guitar. And at this right point here, the drummer will come in and the bass will come in. And the moment they come in, your attention will still go to the lead singer, because the drummer has only 6 milliseconds of pre-delay, and you will automatically know it's in the back. My attention doesn't have to go to it. It's supportive. It's further away from me.
Don't you forget, no man will come between us. That's what you once said. I am what I am. You are what you are. We're tigers in a cage.
So it's not a natural situation. I mean, it's partly based on real acoustics, and it's partly adapted to what we need to make your mix sound through stereo speakers. I told you there are on this bass, it's totally dry. A bass is a low sounding instrument, and it sounds very muddy when you add reverb or when you start adding stereo ping pong delays. So when we listen to this bass, you can wonder, like, why did I call it wet sound then? Because I added some vintage tape. I added a half note delay, but that's more like a tapestry, or like a pad that's sounding under the music than a real delay. So with wet, I mean in this case altered sound. I have some altered sound, not just compressors, but the vintage tape alters the sound, and I have called it wet sound. But it's in fact nothing. It has nothing to do with reverbs or with delays. Let's listen to it again for a moment. So this is the bass. You might need headphones. So this bass has no room around it, as if it's playing in, well, nowhere. So that's magical, isn't it? This bass player has no room, so it's totally 100% dry. So you see, it's an unnatural situation. A mix has hardly anything to do with a real life situation. Normally the bass would definitely have a room. When you have an acoustic bass and it's playing in a concert hall, it has some room around it, but not when you start mixing it. You take away the reverb and the delays so that the bass will not sound muddy. It will sound very dry and punchy. All right, I think you know now everything there is to know, or not everything there is to know about reverb. What didn't focus on? Mostly when I do some explanations, I don't focus so much on other settings. You can see here that there is an initiation level, like how fast will the reverb start working when it's... so at a certain moment, the sound comes in and the reverb should start working. But do I want a very fast, like immediately start working, or a little bit like a stairs up situation that it comes in a little bit slower? You have all kinds of settings here, and I can only advise you to, like here, a crossover point. You have the low spread and the high spread. As you can see, I use less low spread because the sound of this reverb would become muddy if I add too much low, and the low spread is under the crossing point. So below 300 hertz, there is only 40% spread, and above the 300 hertz, there is 100% spread. And if you go to another instrument, the setting will be different. If you go, for example, to the vocal, to one of the reverbs here, you will see that the crossover point is set at 400 hertz and the low spread is like 25% and it's like 85% on top. So I will not go into it that much because there are lots of videos about settings for plugins, but there are hardly any videos that show you how to create a template, how to route your sound through it and create a basic mix that sounds pretty cool and pretty forward. That's what I'm explaining to you now. Like, the biggest mistake you can make actually is that you put a lot of reverb on top of your lead vocal and you don't use the delays. I want this vocal to be quite dry, so it creeps forward in your mix. You will hear it quite close to you. It's as if the singer is quite close to you. And I use only reverb added to the delay. So I have some delays and I add some reverb to it at the sides of the vocal. So the vocal is quite up front and there is reverb on the sides of the vocal. That doesn't exist in a real life situation. So I kind of cut the reverb on top of the instrument and I decide at the sides of the speakers to give you that room, that reverb. Have a look. There's one more thing that might interest you. You can see that every time I have a reverb, there is an EQ just here. This EQ cuts off some frequencies. So every time that reverb is triggered, you only hear the frequencies over here. These are mostly harmonics. So the vocalist might sound somewhere between 100, that male vocalist, between the body of the sound, the notes he's singing, it's somewhere between 100 and, if you're lucky, 400 hertz. And all these are harmonics, and the reverb is only on the harmonics of the sound. So what sounds above the body of this, above the core of that sound. The other instruments even have a dip. Let me show you that. So we have that warm hall. You have that. Oh, it doesn't have it. Let's see if I have it on one of the other instruments. So here, okay, you see that dip here? So this is the reverb on top of the guitar. You can see the reverb is mainly focusing on the harmonics. So the guitar will be playing. This is the core sound of the guitar. Above that core sound, you have some harmonic sounding. And I made a cut. So this is not there. You don't hear it. The reverb is not taking this sound. It's not letting it pass. So only this part of the sound is passing, and I made a dip over here. You see that? Why did I do that? It's minus 3 dB. So I take away a part of the volume around 1500 kilohertz. I do this to not cloud the lead vocalist. I know that the lead vocalist, the harmonics of the lead vocalist here, around this frequency, make the vocal pierce through the mix. So I take away reverb from other instruments on that frequency. It's the piano had it too, I think. It's just that it was I only did it probably for the reverb on top of. Let's see. No, that's not. That's why. That was the solo instrument. This is the piano. Okay, the piano will have it too. So the solo instrument didn't have it. There is no solo in it, so I didn't use it. But if you have a solo instrument, you don't need that dip because the solo will be playing when the vocal is not singing. So you don't need that EQ dip on 1500 hertz. So I did it for the piano too. So you see it. All reverb from all three instruments have a cutoff, and they have a dip around this frequency. So the reverb of all those instruments will not will let the voice pierce through the mix, pierce through that fog of reverb a bit better. All right, and now I think we're done. That's it. That's what there is to say about reverb, at least what I can come up with right now.